So, right. So I don't need to. So I don't need to re-record this. This is the one I'm recording. So so whoever's got their phone ringing in the background, tell them to shoot.
It's in our house.
All right. Don't worry, Dal. I don't want you to leave us. Right. So where we're going to start is at the beginning. I think we need to start off with to try and paint the picture of St. Bees, and we've got two sets of video footage which we're going to show you. And here we go. We're going to share the screen.
Can I ask you calling, please? Okay, I'll get
What?
it's Prince of Wales Hospital for you.
Oh, you'd have to excuse me a minute.
I'll see you soon, Dale.
Right.
Right.
I can see St. Bede's man.
Not would anyone to. I mean, there is no sign of a woman's touches.
Head to the key.
What the hell's that?
I don't invite anyone because.
Hang on a minute. Hang on a minute. Everybody, what is that?
That's not coming from my end.
Is it?
Yes,
Okay, right. St. Bees. So what we're going to do, we're going to start off by, and I will say that anyone that needs to go off and do something else, like speak to somebody, you can always put your mic. Right, okay.
And you. Bye.
Good. Right. Officially started, St. Bees man. Now, the one thing I'm going to openly say about the St. Bees man is that the archaeological excavations to excavate St. Bees man was done so poorly that for one of the most important archaeological discoveries made in Britain, and I make that in jest lots of times, but when they found St. Bees man, they found somebody who had been sealed in a lead coffin for nearly 700 years in so perfect condition that when they opened him up, the blood was still flowing, which sounds rather bizarre, but that is the case. When the body of St. Bees was initially found in 1981, very few people knew about it. It was not openly reported, and when we look at how the excavation was undertaken in connection with St. Bees, most of the evidence was actually lost as well. Archaeologists kept little samples of stuff in their attics, weird things like that. Anyway, so let's read this out. St. Bees man, the discovery in 1981 of the almost perfectly preserved body of a medieval knight, known as St. Bees man, was one of the most extraordinary archaeological burial finds in Britain. It's by far in the top 5 of the best discoveries ever made in British archaeology, and I don't jest with that. So the discovery was made in a ruined chancel aisle of St Peace Priory by archaeologists from Leicester University, and it was an excavation that was being undertaken by university students, and it was being overseen by residents, including children from a local school. But we're not going to get into that yet. The dig was there initially to research an area of a former chancel, an aisle of the main priory church at St. Bees, which was in a ruinous state after the Reformation, and they were excavating in that area to find a pre-Norman church. And the archaeologists didn't believe they were going to find bodies in a chancel. The students started finding bodies in the chancel, which was thought at that stage to be unusual. In other words, we paint the story and it's unraveling that there's something not quite right about the story that I'm telling you in the way it was undertaken by the archaeologists. That body itself was actually taken out the ground in a leaden casket, and then placed onto an asphalt path to be opened in front of members of the public and children. and this was only in 1981. The body was so preserved that you could actually gaze into the eyes of this man, who we now know was called Anthony de Lacy or de Lucy. And it was said that the skin was actually still pink. By the time they got the body into the laboratory, after they'd opened it in the fresh air, meaning that the oxygen started to attack the body straight away, this is one of his hands, his left hand, and you can see that there is still some color there. You can still see them. You can see the nails. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this information in front of it. We're going to read this out, and then we're going to look at some images, and we're going to come into looking at a video, which is one of two, and the contents are quite alarming. But before though we do that, the archaeologists expected a skeleton in the coffin. They didn't expect it to be still airtight, with no moisture attacking anything inside at all. But it revealed a body wrapped in 2 shrouds in the leaden coffin itself. It seemed to have been soaked in a resinous pine material, or liquid, I should say. They got that wrong. And it was in 2 shrouds, resinous liquid placed in there. And also, we find the body is also treated with beeswax. Don't make the mistake I made on Monday, thinking that he's called St. Bees Man because he was buried in beeswax. He's called St. Bees Man because he was found at St. Peace Priory at St. Bees in Cumbria, which we're going to look at when we look at the images. No medieval body has been found in this state of preservation in modern times, if not ever. In a British context, this is truly unique. In a worldwide context, for that date, in the state of preservation, is astoundingly wonderful. The post-mortem showed not only did we have an extremely good preservation with the heart, liver, and kidneys, we've got a good idea of what the individual ate for their last meal. We know that they ate a porridge and a raisin mix, and also blood was still flowing. It hadn't coagulated, which is quite extremely strange. It's almost as if the moment of death was frozen by some kind of astrolift, if you understand what I mean. It's almost as if he was moved in time from then to now in the state that he was buried in. I can only describe this as people opening bodies in leaden caskets from the 1960s. They open those leaden caskets and they've described the bodies are in as good a preservation as the day they were buried. However, there's one slight difference, folks. This body wasn't mummified. They didn't remove the vital organs and put them in Coptic jars. All the organs were still there, except some of the brain was missing, but we don't know how. So what I would like to do is stop sharing, and I would like to hear everybody's impression of what I've just said. So if we can just see what you feel about that. Del, what do you feel about what I've said so far? What's the impression that I'm given?
Sounds as though it's a bit suspicious to me.
In what way?
Was the body as old as they say?
I
or
like that
is it
question.
A fake?
Say that again.
Or is it a fake?
Right. Okay. Can you go a bit further? Don't mention aliens.
An elaborate fake hoax.
Okay. Let's have somebody else. What do you think, Henry?
I'll be intrigued to know what medical follow-up has been done to confirm how the body has lasted so long, if it was from the 15th century.
Right. Okay. Right. So, anything else, Godfrey? Let's have something from you, and we'll carry on.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Del's sort of idea. You know, it's a bit sort of suspect, but I'm sure that they use that to enhance the story the coffin and what was inside it. So take it all with a pinch of salt, I think.
Right. So can I just make 2 points there? Even a body that had been faked would not be preserved in this way. It's just the other thing as well is we've got from all the evidence that we have, the body was genuine. This is what makes it very unusual. Whatever preservation techniques were used, where the body was preserved in Poland, tells us that, and there's lots of strange questions about this body. The main questions are the way the archaeologists treated the body, right? And what we're going to do now, ideally, show you some images, then a little bit of a video. But I'd like to show you where St. Bees is. So if we get screen sharing again, bingo, screen share, good. Let's scroll through. I always seem to get this one. Okay, hang on a minute. Okay, right. Go. Hang on, for some strange reason, the file that I had opened up earlier on seems to be missing a sec.
Ooh.
Hang on. Nope. Okay. I would have shown you the locality then. After the break, I will, for some reason, I've got a file missing. Basically, the locality of St. Bees is in the northeast of Cumbria. It's basically below Cockermouth. And in fact, Anthony de Lacy was in fact Lord of Cockermouth, which is not a title that you would want to be offered today. So, are you all seeing the statement yesterday in front of you?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, now this is a very, very short video. I'm going to pop the sound off on it because I've listened to this a number of times, right? And I like people's questioning. Is this actually genuine? In fact, nobody's actually mentioned that to me at all. However, I will answer that even if you're trying to fake something like this, it would be very difficult to deliver the evidence that was reported the day the body was discovered. So, playing now. Oh, start again. Now, there you go. There you can see there's a couple of weird things. After they had taken the shrouds off and obviously taken the body out the leaden case, the way they're treating the body is extremely bizarre, right? We know that the body was covered in like a tar-like material, but the initial reports as they exposed the body to the fresh air was that the body was still pink. Even with the residue of the resin on there, the body was relatively pink looking, right? And you notice that the guy is not even wearing a mask. And look at the way they treat the guy's head now. Okay. They get in there. Here we go. The way they're actually treating the body is quite strange. Basically, around his chin, you've got a beard there. And there you go. They're cutting, instead of using an endoscope, they're just cutting the chest open. They're going straight into the hemothorax. They're cutting it open, right? And this archaeologist is saying they've never found anything like it. It's extremely unique. And the preservation was extremely unique as well. And as it goes on, as we get back into the video, I'm going to tell him to shut up. Stop talking. There we go. Basically, when initially when they revealed all the shroud away from him, that area was pink. Obviously, with the pine resin material on him, relatively pink. And you could actually still see into the eyes. The eyes were still well formed. But by the time they're examining it, it's the whole body started to deteriorate rapidly. It's a bit like Otzi the Iceman, but on a more extreme level. And look at that there. You can actually see his tongue, and you can actually see inside his mouth. It's all still really well preserved.
Bloody awful.
Yeah, I know it's bloody awful. I've kissed a woman like that.
Yeah.
And she used to, you know her, Goff. She's called Kathy. So the nose itself was really well formed before the nose was really well formed before they started examining the body, before it all started to decay. But as you can get an idea, the lips and everything is really well preserved. But we didn't have the original photography, which is a bit of a shame. As it goes on, this lady archaeologist is talking about the discovery. She's saying that the body itself, when it was found, was extremely unique. Nothing else like this had been found before, and probably nothing like this would be found again. So this is the same woman who is shown in the image coming up, where she's looking at the body as it's being opened. There she is. She actually looks like Princess Diana. And obviously I'd love to hear what she's muttering. And it's the way they're actually ripping the body up. The image, there you go. They're just cutting into the body. I find this absolutely horrific. And what he's saying, look at this, Bill. Bill, just have a look at this. And it goes on to say, is that blood? And they actually they've got blood. The veins were still full of blood. And when they ripped open the, look at this, right? When we looked at this on the Skype class on Tuesday, one of them said they almost as if they look like they're preparing a carcass, because they ripped open the hemothorax. These are the archaeologists in 1981. They ripped open the thorax, and then they found out that there was damage to the ribs, and there was damage to the lungs, and they punctured the lungs, and blood spurted out. It's you know, I've seen a butcher treating a cow better than that. So
are these chaps still employed?
Actually, they're still working archaeologists, and I actually went to Leicester University, but I've got my first archaeological qualification from Leicester University. I'm glad I managed to get a higher degree from the University of Highlands and Highlands, but lots of these archaeologists are still working. And I tell you what, right? Looking at this, examining this, I've been absolutely horrified this week. So what I'm going to do, the file that I originally looked at, I'm wondering if I can just try and get it online a minute again, because I had it. It had a map and everything. I think this is the one. No, that's not it. Hang on. I lost it earlier on. Hang on. Did it? Not that one. Have you guessed what it is yet? Right, okay. Hang on. For some reason, I've lost it. I tell you, we will come back to that after the break. I will find it. So what we're going to do, we're going to stop the sharing a minute. No, actually, we're not going to stop the sharing a minute. We're going to share the screen a minute again. There you go, and share. I have a habit occasionally of dabbling into Wikipedia, and actually the Wikipedia entry on this is pretty good, actually. So what we know is that St Peace Priory in Cumbria, the body found in 1981. We've established the body was the body of Anthony de Lucy. And in this Wikipedia entry, right, I found some really nice stuff, which I confirmed was correct, so that was fine. St. Bees man had been on a crusade, right, not to the Holy Land, had been on a northern crusade, fighting along the Teutonic Knights in Poland, Prussia, and Lithuania. He had basically decided to go out on a jolly with 15 other local knights, almost on a package holiday. He had heard about the campaign against the Lithuanians and the Slavs in the Eastern world, and he went on the northern crusade. And the rather interesting nature of this We'll do that bit there, the discovery. The rather interesting nature of this is in this stuff in front of you, right? Anthony de Lacy was born in 1332. He died in 1368. So approximately 36 years old when he died. He was fighting for the Teutonic Knights in the Northern Crusades. Lots of people didn't know that you actually had crusades other than the Crusades in the Holy Land. And then what we do have is one thing I haven't mentioned at all yet, is that the body was found with the body of a woman. The woman wasn't identified for a few decades. And the body of a woman was first thought to be Anthony de Lacy's wife, but then they realized that Anthony de Lacy's wife lived into 1403, which is nearly 50 years after his death, and she was actually buried in London. So they thought, who is this body buried now found in a skeletal form, buried with the leaden coffin of Anthony de Lacy? And it took them years to find out, but they found out it was actually his sister Maud. Usually in archaeology, when we find the body of a man and a woman, it's always said that they were married. Now, a rather interesting thing as we go on to is a few of the names here, okay? So Anthony de Lacy was sent on crusade in Lithuania by Thomas de Beauchamp. He probably wanted to go anyway. The strange thing is he had only just been married. Now, so when we go into this is where it gets very interesting for us locally. A letter written by John de Moulton of Frampton. And in a moment, we find a local link. Not only is he linked with the Frampton family associated with Frampton Manor in the Vale of Glamorgan, John de Moulton was a very good friend of Anthony de Lacy. Also, if you look at the name de Moulton, that's the same Moulton that gives its name to the site along the 5-mile lane at the place known as LANGFORD. Shut up. So John de Moulton, and the word Frankton gives a local link, but it doesn't stop there. But we'll go on to the next bit in a minute. Anthony de Lacy, he wrote a letter to his wife. John de Moulton writes a letter to his wife in 1367, in November 1367. He writes, Anthony de Lacy and I and all our company make our way towards the parts of Prussia, along with Richard de Welby, my companion. It seems that John de Moulton also died at Cunas, alongside another knight known as Sir Roger Felbrigg of Norfolk. We know, therefore, that these three knights were in Prussia in 1367, and these are also the three knights that were reported as being killed in battle against the Lithuanians in 1368, because we've got letters telling us that. There's another thing then which also gives us a local link, if you can see it on the screen. Anthony was the last of the male line, and the de Lacy estates passed to Maud on his death. Maud, as we've already said, was Anthony's younger sister. Maud obviously inherited these vast estates of the de Lacy family. Maud also inherited considerable estates after the death of her first husband, Gilbert de Umfreville, in 1380. Maud went to marry a member of the Percy family. So in other words, if Maud had had a son, or Anthony may have had a son and Maud was the person looking after Anthony's son, the de Lacy family would have had one of the biggest estates in Britain. They would have had the estates of the Percy family, the estates of the de Lacy family, and the estates of the Umfreville family. And if anyone can tell me why are the Umfrevilles important to us locally?
No idea.
I've got a clue.
No.
the de Umfraville family were responsible for building Penmark Castle.
Ah.
So when I really got into this, I got really excited. I thought, so often do I talk about people that are not linked with the local area, but the de Lacy family, actually, the other thing as well is Anthony de Lacy's mother, Margaret, was a member of the de Moulton family, hence Moulton, Langcarven, 5 Mile Lane. Bingo. So we've got that link there. Yeah?
Yeah.
So
Got it.
now, what that's what the church looks like today. Right, there is the church, but it was a priory church with 2 chancels. And we'll go on to that little bit of detail in a short while. And there is the remains. In this area here is the 2nd chancel, where they found the remains of Anthony de Lacy and Maud. The de Lacy family were buried inside this chancel, in the lesser chancel associated with the chancel that still survives to today. But a lesser chancel or not, the body was buried to rest in front of the altar of this chancel, which tells us that Lord de Lacy was a very special individual indeed. Very few kings in British history have ever been buried in front of the altar of a chancel. Unfortunately, we don't have many answers to those questions. But what I'd like to do here is look at these bodies here. Why did they think that the 2 bodies in the crypt, the 2 bodies in the vault, in the lower chancel, in the chancel aisle, were those of Anthony de Lacy? Well, within the priory, they found 3 effigies. And this effigy here is of Anthony de Lacy himself. So he must be buried there anyway. That is of Maud. And who is this other figure? Well, the other figure might actually be his daughter, who actually died at the age of 3. But that's speculation. And the reason why it's speculation, why would you represent a child as an adult when it died when it was 3? But what we've missed from that nice little Wikipedia entry stuff is this, which isn't actually in a lot, some of this stuff isn't in the other text that I've actually got. We've got the St Peace Priory was closed down at the time of the dissolution, but it remained as a church in the village of St Peace today. Now, the reason why you shouldn't always trust Wikipedia is the following sentence: the body was found buried in a wooden coffin wrapped in lead sheet. Well, we've got no evidence that he was ever in a wooden coffin, but we do know, however, the body was in a lead coffin and not wrapped in a lead sheet. Everyone says, even on my other sources, it said the body was wrapped in a lead sheet. No, it was wrapped in a sealed coffin. It was completely sealed. If it hadn't been sealed properly, the body itself would have simply rotted away. The body was wrapped in 2 shrouds, as we've already mentioned, and was covered in beeswax and pine resin. But Gough is often wrapped in beeswax and pine resin as a dodgy sexual practice that he's involved in every Thursday morning. The coffin and contents were examined forensically, and the body was reported to exhibit pink skin. And the autopsy, I believe, was done very, very poorly. And we've got more evidence of that coming up as well. Not only do we have the stomach contents, we have the nails. And truly an amazing find indeed. And what I'm going to do, right, this missing file, I need to find it. And where is this missing file? A bit upset where it's actually gone. But anyway, we don't need that at this minute. So what I'm going to do, we're going to look at some images. And what I've got to do is stop screen sharing. No, we don't want to cancel the meeting. Right, okay. Something about a psychiatrist. I think we need one, some of us, some weeks. Right, so have we got Pat joined us today then?
I'm here.
Oh, you didn't say you were there.
I'm under Richard.
You know what I'm going to do, Pat? I want a quick chat with you to embarrass everybody. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to give Pat an example of excellence. But before we actually go on to right, so I'm hoping to show what you should be showing is a map. Are you seeing a map?
Seeing a map.
No.
Yes.
No.
Hang on, what is it? No, yes.
It is yes.
For me,
From
it's no.
Goff, from Goff, it's yes.
All right. Well, you're more important than anyone.
Baltic Sea, I got it.
Good. But Dell hasn't got it, but who cares about Dell? He's only from right. I'm just gonna close something down a minute. I want to get there, and for some strange reason, I can't see you all. All right, hang on. If I go back, oh, that's because I'm screen sharing. Pat, I'm going to talk about you, Pat. You know, Pat, you've managed to sign into this technology easily. It was simple for you.
Yeah, right. Took me
Golf
2 minutes.
struggled, and Anne didn't have a clue. But I got to ask Anne, how is your washing machine this week?
I
See,
can't
she's-
hear anything.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good thing, right? Anyway, the map in front of us is it paints more of the picture, right? And the picture is that if we go here, they're going on a jolly to Prussia, and they meet the Teutonic Knights at Marienburg Castle. Much of what you see at Marienburg Castle was bombed by the Royal Air Force, and so was Königsberg in the Second World War. So they've done a complete reconstruction.
Königsberg.
Okay,
Königsberg.
shut up, you tart.
My mother was born there.
All right, otherwise known as Kaliningrad today.
It's
Königsberg.
Kaliningrad now, yeah.
Exactly. So the reason why we've mentioned that is that it's very close by. It gives you an idea. It's in the old Prussia. Marienburg, again, back to Marienburg, is the home of the Teutoburg Knights. Now, the Teutonic Knights, the Teutoburg Knights, the Teutonic Knights. So the Teutonic Knights themselves, that's their home. Now, it's said of the Teutonic Knights after the Crusades in the Holy Line started to collapse. The Teutonic Knights really didn't have much to do. So they decided to crusade against anyone that they wished to. So they crusaded against the Russians. They crusaded against even the Polish. They crusaded against the Lithuanians. They crusaded against the Slavs. You name it, they were crusading. And it was against this backdrop in the year 1367 that our friend John de Malton and his dear compatriot with 15 other knights and all their entourage headed towards Marienburg Castle. And it was in November. However, sounds a very strange thing indeed. November was not the fighting season. And the fighting season for the Teutonic Order was from October into September. And they wouldn't fight against you any other time of the year. So it meant that by the time Anthony de Lacy got to Marienburg Castle, there was no fighting to be had. And apparently the Teutonic Order was so civil towards them that they gave them banquets and entertainment for the next 8 months whilst they waited to fight. And there's another very interesting thing indeed. Nobody has asked me why he was buried in a lead coffin in a very unique an interesting way. I've used the word unique. We've got one other example in the archaeology of Britain where somebody in the medieval period was actually buried in a lead coffin in this way. However, because it obviously there was some damage caused to it, water started to sap in and the body decayed quite rapidly, but this one obviously didn't. And there's one clue to why the body may have been sealed. On the chest of our friend Anthony DeLacy, they found a big lock of hair on his chest, right? Some say it was the lock of hair of his wife. Some say it may have been the lock of hair of a mistress. And to hide the evidence of the mistress, because he wanted to take part of her into the afterlife, he was buried in a sealed coffin. But it's a lot to go to actually hide something like that. And it's quite strange. He went off not long after he'd married, and he had a child with his wife. So again, moving on to a few more other images. And by the way, I'd like to say that Dorothy gives her love, and Monty gives his love, and Robert gives his love as well. So anyway, this is Marienburg Castle. This is where, no, start again, this is wrong. This is Kaunas Castle, or what's left of it, which is on the border between the old Poland and the old Lithuania. At Kaunas was where the knights went to with the Teutonic Order. And one thing I need to show you is where Kaunas is. There is Kaunas. And that's where the castle that we've seen an image of is. And that's where they fought against the Lithuanians in the Northern Crusade. And what they did, they besieged this site, Kaunas Castle. They razed it to the ground. This was where 400 odd Lithuanian soldiers were holding it out against thousands and thousands of Teutonic knights. Because they dared resist the Teutonic knights, the Teutonic knights demolished this stone and brick by brick. Here's an interesting fact about the Teutonic knights. The Teutonic knights built most of their castles only out of bricks, simply because where they built most of their castles, there was not much stone to be found. But this is Kaunas Castle on the border between Poland and old Lithuania. And this was made out of stone and brick. And this was a huge ditch here, an absolutely huge ditch, which had a defended wall at the bottom as well. So when you got into the ditch on this side, and you got over that wall, you went into another ditch, and that was a wonderful defended structure. But eventually the Teutonic knights breached it and razed it to the ground. The other thing that has to be said is that it's where these three knights, the one from Norfolk, the one who's got keen links with the Vale of Glamorgan, and our Anthony DeLacy actually died. Now, a few things I want to show you sort of out of order. A few people have asked, how do we know that Maud is the woman buried with her brother? And I'm going to ask the question, Del, am I convincing you that this is a genuine body?
Yes, no, I've seen the way it was dealt with after it was found.
Yes, well, it is. But there is one problem, right? I'm gonna slip something else in you. Yeah, it is genuine. This isn't a red herring or a trick question. We'll go on to this in a second. The body was the treatment of the body was done so appallingly, right, that the only samples kept from the body were hidden away in an attic of an archaeologist. And that's how we were able to look at the DNA years later, which from my looking at this is quite appalling. Archaeology Cymru has got a retrospective Ministry of Justice license, and we're still working on the remains of somebody at this minute. And we've got gloves, and we're handling the skull. We're trying to put the skull together, and we've got the scalpels and all the rest of it, right? And that's a set of skeletal remains. This was a set of intact human remains with the body. This is not any human. This is a human who's got a lot more than the bones, right? Anyway, back to this. When we look at this image, what we've got part of a crest, part of the coat of arms of Maud de Lacy. So she was married to Lord Gilbert Umfreville. Then she married into the Percy family, and those three fish, which can anyone identify what fish they are?
Haddock.
Salmon.
No. No
Trout.
salmon. No, they're pike.
Oh.
They're three pikes. The De Lacy family, their symbol was these three pikes. Now, what we've got the effigies found in St. Peace Church. We've also got this found in the church. So it obviously tells you that somebody connected with the Lacy family is actually buried there, and there's only one that married into the Percy family, and that was Maud. So we know through DNA and other evidence now that it was, but at the time, this was the direction they were going in. And actually, there is in fact Maud's teeth. We're not going to do much about Maud. We're going to do Maud at the end. There's the family crest, a bit more information, and we've got a few other things I want to show you as well, which is this. We're back into we're into the man himself, right? And that looks like a nicely, that looks like I've just been to the butcher's and they're just cutting away a nice piece of meat for me, right? That's what that looks like. And that they removed the hemothorax, right? And there's blood spurting out, right? What you're seeing is actually blood, right? And this is the way the body was treated. I can't express the absolute horror I've had. And this isn't it, right? This isn't it. I've got a video that I'm going to show you, which heightens the lack of respect given to this individual. And lots of the archaeologists who did the work are still actually working today. There you go. Again, this is looking at the tongue again. There you go. This is looking deep into the mouth. And obviously, they say he had pretty bad teeth, actually, but that's actually on the teeth. That's actually the pine resin on there. And the answer to the question, what happened to the body, was they actually reburied it. The most important, one of the most important discoveries ever made in Britain, they just reburied it. So the body has long since decayed and all the evidence is gone. And why they did this, I just can't, they could have, if they treated this body like Otzi the Iceman that was found 10 years later, right? We would have learned so much about the world of medieval Europe. We would have learned about diseases. We would have learned about antibodies associated with the Black Death. This guy would have had antibodies in his system that had been built up from being exposed to the Black Death, which was only 15 years earlier.
Signal's broken up.
Can you hear me now? Everybody okay?
Yes.
Yep, I hear
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
It was your signal, Henry.
We have no signal.
Oh, shut up, you tart. So as you say, you're hearing me being very angry, and I am very angry about this. So what we're going to do, I think, we're going to go to, we're going to stop sharing again, so you can see me on screen. I get really upset these days that people think I've got a big nose.
It's huge.
Thanks. Can I just make a comment, everybody? Why has nobody got their... why can't I see Goff? Why can't I see Pretty Anne with her freakish red hair? Why can't I see little Dell? And, it's terrible.
And Richard.
I don't know. I don't know how to do it.
Oh, actually, the moral of the story: don't do anything; you'll lose us, right? So before we have our tea and coffee break, okay? Oh, and by the way, a little announcement I'm gonna make is that hopefully everybody got last week's notes. If they didn't get last week's notes, I don't know why. They need to let me know. Next week we're going to be looking at the Roman Emperor Caligula. Anyone that's got any press cuttings wants to send them to me in the post can do so. I can give you my personal address afterwards because Archaeology Company's office for the time being is closed. And the other thing as well is when everything is back to normal, we'll continue you know, with the payments and everything as we've been doing. And the other thing as well is for people in Lantwick Major, we're going to find a new space to give lectures because I'm not having people in a room like that again where we're all coughing and spluttering. Does that sound good to you, Goff?
Certainly. Yes,
so,
agreed.
Agreed. We've got to do it. And sounding not to benefit from this present situation. And we're not going to mention what the present situation is. We managed to get away with it this morning. Hopefully, there'll be more spaces that we can have bigger classes in Lantwick Major when we all step back. And that's what I'm hoping for. Right. Anyway, back to where we were. Back to the screen again. I want us to... here we go. Now, do you know when you innocently look at a document online, right? You type something in and you're thinking, I've seen that. I've already seen that image. That's the man's left hand, and it's still relatively pink, but not pink enough. And I don't think they had cleaned their nails well either. But those are the nails there. And if we want to go here, we know this almost perfectly. We know this, wrapped in lead. There you go, looking into the face. And obviously you can see that the nose has collapsed at this point. It was still strident, like my big Uta, right? And there it is. And as I said, I went out with a woman who had teeth like that.
I can't see those teeth.
We're just seeing your face.
Why didn't you? That's because I hadn't screen shared. Why didn't one of you tell me?
You're enjoying yourself too much.
Lecture.
Shut up, you tart.
You're getting paid a small fortune for this.
Not enough, my friend. I really appreciate your support. There's the hand again. Right, there you go. Oh, should we actually try and do some palm reading on this? It says you will go on a journey, right, to Poland, and you will live for a few months and you will die. Now, there you go. Oh, and you'll have one child. That's all there. So there he is again. Look, you can see the nose is starting to collapse there now. And obviously looking there, you know, I went out with a woman who had teeth like this once. And she was from Barry. So the way the body was treated, when they took it out the ground, right? I'm gonna let you watch the video after the break. When they took the body out the ground, they put it on the asphalt path alongside the priory with a crowd of people around it. And in 1981, they decided to do an open air opening of the sarcophagus. The facts were, the archaeologists believed that because it was sealed, the body had all putrefied and gone to liquid, right? They thought this, but they opened it without any masks on, with a group of children that surrounded the coffin, right? They did all this. Anyway, we'll look at that video after the break, but there you go. And then we go down, they're talking about the DNA. And there you go, into notice that the only sensible people with masks on are in fact the photographers, right? And everyone else doesn't see. Why do the photographers have masks on, and why is it the archaeologists don't? And then
say something about the IQ level
of archaeologists. Yeah, I tell you what, you are right there. And listen to this, right? The person writing this article in 2018 said, I have spent a lot of time trying to find material from the man that was not buried, right? So what they mean by that, the body was in a lead coffin. I think that's what they mean, because the body was eventually reburied. A little time ago, I managed to get some tissue samples from Eddie. He had them in his attic. And as the science has proved, it is now worth a DNA attempt. This was done so badly that the archaeologists took samples home and kept them in their attic. And look at this. Now, they ripped the whole chest open, right? And they pulled the thing. They pulled the whole chest open, everything, right? Ruptured the ribs to get their hands in to see what the kidney looked like. And appalling is not a word I would give this. They completely desecrated the body. You wouldn't even, to be honest with you, right? This is supposed to be a human being, right? It's supposed to be a human being, and they're treating it in this way. Nobody would treat one of your relatives like this today. So why did they treat somebody from this period like this? As they're filleting the body, right? You could almost think that if you put that on a barbecue, it'd be good enough to eat. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to take a break, right? And we're going to take a break, and what we're going to do, we're going to ask any questions before we do that. And hopefully we're screen sharing still. Are we screen sharing?
Yeah.
Yes, Google.
What can you see?
Google.
All right, then I will share
Richard.
this in. I will share this now quickly.
Your face.
Right. That's
In
not
your dress again.
That's not Leicester University. Yeah, exactly. That's the University of Highlands and Islands. I don't think Princess Anne will ever forget the meeting I had with her in Kirkwall that day. Apparently, she's still talking about it. Right. So we're going to stop screen sharing there now. I want any questions, and then we will have a break. Come on.
Lucy, did he live in St Peace?
Yes, he did. We know his sister lived. Right. Okay. The answer is yes, and the answer is no. I'm gonna have the cop out answer on this one. The answer is we know his sister lived there, right? Which will go on to the evidence in a short while, right? We know his sister lived there. Like any landowner, they had vast estates across Britain. So it's likely that he lived in lots of estates across Britain. It's like John de Moulton. It's unlikely he ever visited Moulton in the first place. As Gilbert de Umfreville, it's very likely that he never visited the Vale of Glamorgan either. But we've got the family links there, and that's the most important thing.
Okay.
Anybody else got any questions?
I think the only question for if he was brought back in a lead coffin sealed, could that have been that he had actually contracted some sort of disease?
You know, when I go quiet, right, it's usually because somebody said something really sensible. Actually, this is what made me so angry, right? This is what made me so angry because, you know, we don't really understand elements of Eurestis pensis. We don't really understand if it can survive long periods of time. But what can survive is anthrax. Now, if there was anthrax spores within that body, as they open that coffin, everybody there would be dead within about a week. Right? the amateur way that the body was treated, right, leads me to believe that they probably buried the body because they just wanted to, you know, they just needed to get rid of it. But this was actually filmed, unusually filmed at the time. It would have been good for the archaeologists if it hadn't have been filmed, because we wouldn't have most of what we're saying today. But we do have lots of what we're saying today. When you say that the body could have been sealed, I believe that that is a good reason for putting the body in the way it was put. And the other thing as well is John de Moulton wasn't brought back. He was actually buried at Königsberg.
Königsberg.
Shut up, you. Königsberg, right? He was buried at Königsberg.
Umlaut over the O.
All right, about your umlaut. Bloody hell. He was John de Moulton was buried there, and so was their other colleague, that, you know, 2 of the 3 that died that day. However, de Lacy was brought back. Why? There you go. Right. Okay. Any other questions? We'll have a break for 10 minutes.
Okay.
I'm going to do my little register now and put the kettle on, and I'm going to watch our little crow. Oh, do you all want to see my little crow? There she is. Can you see her?
Yep.
There she is. Anyway, let's have a break. I'll be back. Henri, you thought I was strange.
Can't see anyone else.
Yeah, okay. I'll see you in a minute. Don't turn it off. Just stay there, and we'll be back in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Cheers.
Okay.
Cheers.
Everybody's in their house.
Well, they're all the nice boys love homosexuals. Hello. Yeah. So what you're saying, you can see the images, but you can't. Well, I'll tell you what, if you would have phoned me a minute ago, and if you would have phoned me 10 minutes ago, I could have just put you on the side and you could have listened to it. Yeah, well, I can do that for the next half. What? You'll hear me, you can listen to us on your phone. I haven't phoned you, I'll get unlimited calls anyway. No, now you get the notes anyway, like you did last week. No, you'll get them when we do them next week, yeah. Yeah, no, they'll be done at the end of the week. I'll send them to you. All right. Then. All right. Then, no problem. See you then. Bye. Bye. I continue myself at home. One of the family. One you so strong. It's clear. Going to get along. This chapter B, we should see some other days. Empty like days, my grand. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Look at you, look at you. Do you like my chicken, Del? She's gone. Are you there, Goff?
Yeah, hello.
All right,
Hello.
we'll be back. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, all right.
Do you like this? Do you like one of my little
Hello?
chickens?
Yeah, it's just shit on your shoulder.
Oh, shut up. Anyway, we'll be back now. I just gotta get my tea.
Oh, I think I've got you. Hmm.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Who's that?
Goff.
Who is it?
Goff.
Oh, I don't know you, do I?
Do you know? What did you
Goff.
press?
Oh, no, I've met you. I just press participants, I think.
Oh, right. Good.
Are you? Oh, you're in Lancashire Major, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in Bridgend. I'm Anne.
Yes.
Hello. But am I only talking to you now?
No, I'm here.
Well,
I'm
no, I
listening.
can hear you.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean,
Carl.
I just managed to do it on my. I just managed to get it on my phone.
I did it on a bus once.
You've done it everywhere.
Oh, you are awful.
Yeah, do you know, I know I'm awful.
I'll turn it off now because you want privacy, don't you?
No, I thought you were joining us.
I know, but you're going to, I'm watching you have your break.
No, I'm just waiting for everyone to come back.
Your house looks nice.
That's not my house. That's his. Look at his. Does it?
Whose?
That's not my house. That's not even me.
Oh. Oh, you confused me now. I'm turning you on.
You're easy to confuse. Oh no, we want a bit of totty on you. We're missing a bit of totty.
Oh, I don't. Oh. Oh well. I got it. Oh, right.
Look, I got the class register here, so I got to make sure. It's a bit skewiff because we've got an oddman from Lantworth Major joining us, so I don't know how that works.
Has he gone through passport control?
Well, no, he's a bit of a renegade, really.
Is it? Are you in Lantworth Major?
Yeah. Oh, don't upset him.
You're in Goff's house.
No, I'm not in Goff's house.
He's in my bedroom.
I'm in his bedroom, for God's sake.
That's one place you don't want him.
I've been in
bedroom.
Anne used to come into my bedroom on a regular basis, didn't you, Anne?
Hello, Henry.
Greetings.
Greetings from some Wick.
Henry.
Oh, you actually, I realise now that's what I'm supposed to have is a pair of earphones.
I should have Nookie every week as well.
You look
Henry.
like a DJ.
Yes.
Where do you live in Wick?
Just off St Bride's Road, about 2 minutes from the Star Inn.
Those new houses.
The new houses.
The
They're on the new. All right. Okay.
The ones that they built. The
that's
ones
all.
they built on those those beautiful fields. He did it himself.
Yep.
The ones we fought to stop.
That's
ones
it.
we
We're here now.
Yeah.
Oh.
I gotta
What's
be
that
honest.
big crack? Have you actually had a structural engineer in to look at your ceiling?
Oh no, that's not a crack. That's part of the CCTV system we've got here. We've got a CCTV camera in the back. That's where the thing goes across. We couldn't be bothered to put anything else in there. Hey, look! I've noticed you haven't got a bulb in your bloody thing behind.
I've lost you now.
Oh, I lost you
Never
ages ago.
I've lost you now.
If you leave me now.
What are we doing sitting in the house? Oh, guess what? I just had a phone call from Lynn. Nobody knows Lynn, but
Who's
She's
Lynn?
an old witch. Tell us about Lynn.
She's our 81-year-old piece of totty. You know, she was quite glamorous, really, and she was an air hostess, and she used to come to our class, and then she went to when she got divorced, she went to
Bristol.
South Africa, to work on a safari park. And I've actually got a picture of her. I've actually got a picture of her with a lion, you know, like holding a lion. So I could bring that in. No, I'll post it online or something. I've lost. Shh. Where's
Well,
Anyway, she's in Bristol now, and she
What, do you want
lives
a
in
medal?
sheltered accommodation, and they had to put her. She had a family over, and they all went in the garden, so that was nice.
Yeah.
But my mother-in-law, who was 94, and it was Mother's Day, and it was her birthday on the 22nd. She had bugger all. And she had to just stay there on her own. Oh dear, never mind.
Yeah, I'll be in Lantwick next Thursday morning.
Shut up. Where's your crow? You sound like your crow.
Right, let's get started. I can't handle it. You know what? Do you realise why he just said that? He's going to be in Landsford Major next week.
Well, we could, if it was nice weather, we could all sit,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, the Landsford
out.
Major in Lantrit and the Bridgend in Bridgend. That's what we're trying to say.
Yeah. We would be socially distant. Oh, God.
Right, okay. Right, so I gotta work out where the bloody hell we were, because I've lost.
Right, crack on.
What?
Well,
Right, okay, right.
you should do a show, Henry. You look really, you know, like a DJ there, a radio broadcast.
To be sure.
To be sure. Right, okay. Actually, talk amongst yourself for one more minute. I'm just going to see what's gone wrong with my technology here. And tell them about your washing machine. Anne,
My
tell them about
computer's
your
just been
washing machine.
infected. The virus check has just come on.
Yeah, oh, look, we nearly got away
I think
with
that's because I sneezed.
It's all right. It didn't find anything dangerous. I've just checked.
Oh, for God's sake. Right. Okay, right. Let's get back to it. Right. I got to be honest with you, right. The only sensible one I've got in blooming Bridgend is Pat.
Who's Richard?
Yeah. Under my husband's name.
Dorothy's off her head. Right.
Everything went pear-shaped there.
What? Right, so let's share screens again, right? Let's just right, okay. Right, do you know what? The article that I was seeking was in front of me all along. Okay. So that's one of the stepchildren. Right, yeah, you can go on your iPad, right? I tell you what, I'll give you some matches and some kerosene, right?
Yeah, okay.
Take it in the middle of the garden, right? And just play with it. Yeah, go on, yeah, you can play it now. It's after 3:30. I'm a good role model for the stepchildren. Right, so one thing I was going to show you earlier on, ages ago when we started, before Anne started going on about air hostesses, right? I wanted to show you where St. Bees actually was. Shut up. I wanted to show you where St. Bees was, and there it is, Carlisle. He was Lord of Cockermouth, right? And there's St. Bees. Yes, Anne, it's a real place. It's not your fantasy, right? So there it is. There's St. Bees. It's sort of near the coast. It's not exactly on the coast, but that'll help us understand our lady that we're going to look at. Now, before we can actually go on to the lady, we need to complete the bit about our gentleman, which we'll do in a short while. But there is the official opening of the body in front of the whole class of children and the archaeologists. This is on a bitumen tarmac path near the excavations, and the area we're talking about, this is the area here where you've got the ruined part of the aisle in 1739. Now it's got a roof on it and it's sort of being utilized. And as it goes down again, this is the area where they excavated in the South Chancel, they call it this, the aisle alongside the main chancel, the South Chancel. And then we've got a bit of an overall plan as well. Quite a large building. Now, one little thing that we're talking about. Hang on, I got something come up on the screen a minute. The effigies that we find, the stone cut effigies, are actually associated with very prominent parts of the church. This is now called the Old College Hall, but it used to be the main chancel of this priory church. And if you notice there, it says the approximate location of a female effigy where it was placed in the main chancel of the church. So it tells you two things. One, that the de Lacy family is very important. Two, that they actually they could actually bear having a female effigy inside the main chancel. So the excavations here, it's in quite a small area, and you can actually start seeing the lead coffin being revealed there, and an archaeologist working there on top of SK100, who is in fact Maud. And as we start to go down again, there is Maud. So what we're going to do, we're not going to do anything about Maud for a minute. There's some really interesting science which we need to do. And anyone who's got to leave because they've got to pay for parking need to do so now. do you know last night, because I've been teaching these classes for so many years, last night I was sitting at the table and said to Michelle, I said, well, who's looking after your children tomorrow? And she said, well, you are. And I said, how can I be? I've got to go to Bridgend and Lanswick Major tomorrow. She said, no. And I suddenly realised. Has that happened to anybody? Or is it just me? No? All right, it's not happened to anyone, right? Okay.
No, it's all right. We were quite happy not to have to catch that bus.
Right, okay. So what we're going to do, why the hell is he there? Right, hang on, hang on. Oh, it's happened again. Oh, right on.
Lithuania?
Yeah, Lithuania, that's where we're going.
Oh,
but that, right, okay, I've just got to type something into the doodad a minute, and we will be there. It's quite an easy video to find, the one I'm going to show you now. It's a video of me in a damask bra.
Is Henry all right?
What?
Henry, are you all right?
Yeah, all good at this end.
Who's coughing then?
It's not me.
Who's got the cough?
He's a very naughty boy. Shut up. Right. Now, and shut up. Nobody, no wonder Goff don't want to stay with this group. Right. So how are we sharing this thing on the screen now? It should say St. Bees man and lady, yeah?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Now this guy, Chris Robson, was one of the guys involved in the original excavation, right? Unfortunately, you can't hear the sound, but I will describe bits of this video. It's good, nice bits of footage on it. So here we go. As it gets into it, this is Chris Robson. He's saying what a wonderful find this is. Extremely important archaeological evidence, and he was one of the archaeologists involved in the work there. And as we start to, right, this is
Is it
Shut up! What?
Is it a... Oh, I forgot what they're called now.
And
Is it a... Oh... What's the name of those things? Egyptian.
It's not a mummy.
no.
It's not a mummy, is it? Oh, right. Thank you.
And can you just shut up?
All right.
Right. Okay. This is the reconstruction of the building as it looked, and the point to be made is for Anthony de Lacy and Maud to be buried in a large, well-esteemed establishment. Like the St Peace Priory complex, and they're basically put in pride of place in this building here, which I should be showing with the cursor. This is where the chancel usually is, and this area here is where they were actually buried. So the video sort of goes on, and he's sort of saying, you know, this is a wonderful find, which it is. And then what we have there is just going over a few things. Again, I've mentioned as well that to have the bodies of these two people buried in front of an altar is quite a thing. You've basically got two altars in this place, the high altar and the altar here. You've got obviously lower altars, but these are the main ones. So, you know, they're buried in a very special place. And as the video goes on, as Chris Robson goes on, if we sort of move in, the one thing about this is that the archaeological excavation there was originally...
There's Benny.
The archaeological excavation there was originally for students. And, you know, it was thought to be an area that they could excavate. They would be doing very little damage to the archaeology. And, you know, they'd be doing very little damage or anything because it was thought relatively there wouldn't be much there. They had no ideas what they would eventually find. And as we start to go through this video again, what we do find is this. The original part of the story is that they believe that Anthony de Lacy was buried and he would be the only one interred there. And the archaeological evidence showed that they had to widen they had to widen the vault or the crypt. They had to widen it in front of the altar to actually put Maud in there. So what we're talking about, we're not talking about a family vault or a family crypt or whatever it is. They're not just talking about something blasé. They're talking about major engineering works to expand it to put Maud in there. So this is a really unusual thing. The other unusual thing is that Maud, when they were excavating Maud, she was actually found without any feet and found without any hands. One thing that's not mentioned is those basically at the top and the bottom of the lead coffin or the lead sarcophagus itself. There was two iron metal bands. By the time you get to the later images in this video, they're gone. The archaeologists have discarded them. So not only are we losing archaeological evidence by the archaeologists, the way they treat the body, as we know, is quite horrific. You're looking at her skull, and what's happened is the soil from above has built up on her skull and flattened it out a bit. So that's what's going on there. So if we move on a little bit more, hang on. We move on a bit more. We've done that bit and we need to go here. And you can see another image. What we're trying to see here is that we can see her feet are actually gone. And the weird, it's almost as if they've widened it, but they've also not left much room to put her alongside her brother. Because whatever this structure is associated with the body, the lead casket, her right leg is very close to it. And it's almost as if it's been sort of pushed in there. So even though they've allowed a lot of, they widened it, they put her in there, it's still not wide enough to take Maud's body. Again, carrying on. Okay. Okay, we'll just move on a bit more. We've got a reconstruction. We've got a sort of this reconstruction of the church image. We'll just show that again, just briefly. And there you go. This is where they're buried. Now, another thing that you don't see on the other plans as well is that the bodies are actually orientated to the east, orientated to the west, and not in the direction of the chancel. If you can see the heads there, the bodies are poking the wrong way, which is also very unusual. However, we're starting to come to think that there's no real rule to show how people were being buried in the medieval period. Just because you're buried east to west or south to north doesn't mean not that you're a Christian. So as we've got another nice image coming up here. The body weighed about 60 pounds, and it took 4 individuals to move the body. And this is actually after they have opened the body in front of members of the public and then wrapped plastic around it. So the oxygen is now actually getting in there, attacking everything. So Chris keeps talking about the wonderful discovery, and watch this now, everybody. Right, this is very important. I'll try and basically, you've got children watching in there, and they're trying to open it with a hammer and a chisel. And note two things, right? There's no protection there against lead poisoning. There's no protection there against the contents. The archaeologists thought that the body had gone to liquid. Okay, and there's children watching, and there's none of the archaeologists are wearing protective gear. Look, they're wearing, and they're now cutting it open using they used a saw, he said, and then they just got a Stanley knife and opened it, right? And you see that there, a claw hammer, they're ripping it open.
Unbelievable.
Very technical.
And there they are. They've opened it. They've opened it, and they're holding it back with a claw hammer, the lid of the coffin. They've made this lid because it was all sealed in. Now, look at the next reaction. Look at that. One, they're children, and Chris Robson maintains on that image that no smell is released. Obviously, smell was released. If you look at the the way the people are grimacing in the background, some smell is released. And as we know full well, I'm going to avoid mentioning the present situation, but there's a link. You know that if you can smell decay, the bacteria has been released in the air. That's a fact. So if this contained anthrax, right, we would have had one of the biggest anthrax outbreaks in Britain since the outbreak in the 1950s, 60s, where there was an anthrax outbreak. I think it was in Norfolk. So, and then they start to poke and prod in front of everybody, and it is shocking. This archaeologist, he's doing this lecture as if they did nothing wrong, right? He's doing this lecture as if, but even in the audience, if you listen to this footage that you can find on YouTube, it's easy to find. It's St. Bees Medieval. You find it straight away. You'll see the audience in this guy's lecture. I think in 2016, I think it was. You hear the audience going, "Oh my God, how did this happen?" Right? And this guy's not even reacting.
No. No.
It's almost as if it's normal. I tell you what.
So you think the anthrax came from?
No, Anne, you've missed the link. No. I was trying to say, right, that if this body had contained anthrax or traces of Eurestis pestis, the Black Death, by opening it in that way, it would have been airborne, and it was, whatever was in there was airborne. It would have killed everybody there. That's the point. This is how unprofessional this was done. And even any expert knows you do not work with old lead like that. You just don't do it. You don't do it.
No.
Well, can you just bear with me a second? Everyone bear with me a second. Hello, Michelle. Hi. Hi. Can I call you back? I'm still teaching. Anyway, everything okay? Okay, look, I'll give you a call in about 20 minutes, okay? Look out for your phone. Bye. Bye-bye. 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 Bye. Hey, there's nothing like reconstructing a Bridgen class where I allow my phone to ring.
Yeah.
Right, anyway, back to where we are. Look at this now, right? Now, they've lifted up this body's arm, right? This is supposed to, they know that this body is really old, and they've just wrenched the arm up and they're just examining it. That guy hasn't even got a mask on.
Well, I suppose it is very, very unusual, all this protective gear now, because
why is it?
Well, remember, there was a smallpox outbreak a while, you know, when I was a child. And I remember thinking, well, you know, well, I didn't think there was any hoo-ha about it, really.
Well,
Just, you know, make sure you've got your...
Well, obviously, the main thing is we know lots of this stuff is airborne anyway. And back to this, we know he's got a beard. On his chest area, it's not his own hair. He's got somebody else's hair there as well. Some believe it was his wife's hair. There are the believes it was somebody else. But I think the idea that we're looking at, you know, the idea that he may have contracted some disease, that's even, you know, surely this is even on Time Team, you know, when they were opening sort of very mundane burials, I would always see Phil Harding wearing some kind of a mask. So anyway, back to this video. As we start to get into this, he's going to show some more footage. I think hang on a minute. Right, we've done that bit there. And then he goes on to talk about Maud, which we're going to go on to next. Now we do believe that looks a bit like Anne. So because that lady's got red hair, Anne's got red hair, and apparently Maud had a truncated jaw, and she had a very, very large nose. Apparently,
I haven't got a large nose.
Don't stop defending yourself. So the other thing about this video is this bit here. Now this is rather interesting for us all. When they started to work out the Delucy tree, they looked at this. They thought, right, Margaret de Moulton, who was the great granddad of Anthony. So Moulton, yes, the same estate as John Moulton that we're talking about. And we got Thomas, and then they seem to keep it in the family. Another Margaret de Moulton, Thomas de Moulton, the father of Anthony and Maud. Two interesting points here is that one thing, the table's wrong for one reason, but we'll come on to that in another point. Anthony married Joan Fitzhenry, and Joan Fitzhenry outlived Anthony by nearly 50 years. Maud, his sister, lived until another 30 years, and she's actually buried with him. There's one thing about this is that when you look at these charts, it's nice to sort of second guess.
Did they die of something?
What, Joan? Did Joan die of something? What, at the age of 65? Yeah. Old age. Yeah. Anyway, and Maud was a lot more than 50 years old, right? When I read out a little bit towards the end, right? Maud was a little bit more than 50 years old.
Right.
Because, Maud, when Anthony died, was likely still a teenager, right? But there's no way Margaret could have given birth to Maud if you look at the maths in her late 40s, early 50s. So Maud was a lot older than that. I think Maud was something like 70 when she died. Anyway, back to this. Anthony and Joan, who he's married to, gave birth. Joan gave birth to Joanna, who actually died after 3 years. And they do believe that some of the bones of a baby that were found, or a young child, not a baby, were actually the bones of Joan. She was actually buried with her father. There were a few other things with this video, including this little next point I want to show you now. If we go back to this, we know that this is definitely 100% the same John, the same Anthony de Lacy that actually went with John de Moulton to Prussia. And we know that because John de Moulton, that's the signature, John de Moulton, writes about his dear friend in the first line. I went with Anthony. I've come with Anthony and all the rest of the retinue to help the Teutonic Knights in a crusade, in a holy crusade against the Lithuanians. So he's John de Malton's actually writing to his wife at this stage. So what I'd like to do actually is I'd like to move on now. What we're showing you, this is the place where Akunas on the Polish-Lithuanian border, that the three were actually killed. So what I'd like to do now, I'd like to go to this document that I'd actually found. So this one. We're going to go back to this document. Can you see this document in front of you?
No. A skeleton.
Yeah, that's right. This is a document. You can see the skeleton, right? So this is Maud, and I've got some really nice science that they actually proved that this was Maud. She's missing her feet there, as we've already said. There's Maud's skull, and she's got quite this bit. This is actually her nose, where the cursor is. So she had quite a pronounced nose, a bit like Anne's. And the other thing as well is we know she had tooth decay, but obviously lots of people had tooth decay back in the day. And again, these calcareous deposits of mineralized deposits that have built up on her teeth, that they also found in the ground associated with the archaeology of Maud. Now going down this, I've got two fascinating tables. Oh, and one other thing I'm just going to show you quickly. They found out that the hair of the hair on the chest of St. Bees man was from a different person than from him himself. So that was actually proven archaeologically, because they did keep 1 or 2 samples. Anyway, back to this. This is absolutely fascinating, right? So if we want to zoom in on this, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. Right, so what we've got mineral, from the strontium values, which is, you know, the which is the values that are seen in sandstones, limestones. The strontium values also come from volcanic rocks and so on. These strontium values for enamel were to indicate that the lady buried alongside Anthony de Lacy, known as SK100, was somebody who grew up in the St. Bees area, because the strontium values indicated that the person lived within an area rich in Triassic sandstone. The other thing as well is when I started to examine the teeth as well, they found out that whoever was buried alongside Anthony had been exposed to various levels of different oxygen isotopes. And those indicated different signatures associated with both sea water and rainwater. So, you know, so we know the lady herself, Maud, lived in that area. We've proven that the body in the grave is actually from that area, from the sandstone. We know that they lived near the sea and sort of a little bit inland. That's proved the profile. And then the final thing is this. This is absolutely fascinating. Now, to try and work out the age of the individual and what period they were buried in the ground, to fix that this is actually Maud, they looked for concentrations of lead. And because there was a large level of lead pollution in the water, because it was being mined in that area or nearby, there was lead associated. If you went to a monastery, you might be drinking water from lead piping. And also, if you're drinking out of a pewtered tankard, which would be the thing to do, you would have levels of lead concentrating in your body. So if the body had been, for example, from the Neolithic period, there'd be low levels of natural lead exposure. What they've done in Britain, they've examined bodies that they've got fixed dates. And in those bodies of fixed dates, these triangles at the top here, those bodies showed large levels of lead. And St. Bees, the body of the woman known as Maud at St. Bees, showed that she had large concentrations of lead in her body. Another piece of evidence proving who we actually have buried alongside her brother, who is in fact Maud. So the one last thing I'd like to do is actually go to this. And when we did this earlier on today, I read it out in full, so that's what we're going to actually do. So we've done the top bit there. Maud de Lacy. Now, up until proving that this was Maud, this was like the mindset. And they got a few things wrong. The lady originally thought to be in her 30s. Obviously, couldn't have been Maud, they said. Couldn't have been his wife either, and it couldn't have been his daughter, so they didn't know who she was. But then they found out that the body was in fact of a later age, somebody who was in their 50s and beyond. So what they did, they examined the isotopes that we have, and she was at least in her 50s, and obviously just over that would bring the profile of Maud. Now, given a bit of history to background and stuff to this, Maud inherited the de Lacy estates when her brother died and later married Henry Percy, linking the de Lacy estates with a Percy land centred around Alnwick Castle in Northumberland. So in other words, what we're talking about, as I said earlier on, Auntie de Lacy had extensive estates. They may have been from the area of St Peace, but they did have extensive estates. And I mentioned the family, the original family crest would have had these pikes on them, and then because of the marriage of Maud, you've got the two rampant lions associated with the. I've had a blonde moment a minute with the Percy family. So they proved categorically that this was in fact our wonderful Maud. So this last little bit of information, I might put a final bit of meat on the bones. And that's not to be any joke at all. So the Northern Crusade in Prussia and Lithuania. So I'll read this out in full. Since then, much has been discovered about the ill-fated last journey of Anthony de Lacy to Prussia. In 1367, having inherited estates from his father 2 years before, he decided to join a number of knights. We've got 15 knights and their retinue on a pilgrimage to join the Teutonic knights on the Northern Crusade against the Slavs, and in the case of Kunas, against the Lithuanians. The other thing as well is Anthony left his wife and his daughter on this dangerous mission, and nobody could understand why. Maybe he had a woman. Christian knights went on the Northern Crusade for a variety of different reasons. There was a spiritual preferment, whereby that it was taught that a crusader dying in battle did not have to wait in purgatory before heaven. In other words, he preferred to die in battle than being at home with his wife. Somebody was asked on the internet, the guy from the BBC said, well, Mr. Jones, would you prefer to be your wife and children at home, or would you prefer to be yeah, I'll go with the other one, he said. Anyway.
Yeah.
So so basically they went on this journey, the group of them, and it was seen to be like a package tour adventure. Lots of people went on these adventures to these crusades because there was a lull in the war with France, so they all felt that they had to fight somewhere else. Remember, it was only 30 years early, well, just about 38 years earlier that we got Joan of Arc in I think I got the dates right there, 1331, or maybe I'm on the blonde moment. Anyway, so what we've got there, they've gone on this pilgrimage. They've gone on his pilgrimage to go on a crusade. John de Moulton writes to his wife on the 23rd of November 1367, and he writes, "Dear wife, know that Anthony de Lacy and I and all our company make our way towards Prussia." So in other words, we know that these people are together. We got lots of information. So that company crossed the channel and made the several weeks journey to Prussia at this point, to join the number of knights from other places and countries assembled at Marienburg Castle, which is west of Königsberg. Have I got that right?
Yep.
Which was the headquarters of the Teutonic Knights. It was probably too late for any action that year, and they probably knew it. So in other words, because the Teutonic Knights fought only in August and September, if they got there in November, it meant that the Teutonic Knights would look after them. And everyone knew that at that time, the Teutonic Knights had a reputation for honouring foreign knights with fine banquets and entertainments until the summer. And that would involve a few women of the knights. There is some evidence that the English party was used to attack a fort that had been built at Kunas on the old Polish-Lithuanian border. And it was reported at the time 3 of our men were killed from the walls. And these are now known to be Anthony de Lacy, John de Moulton, and Roger Felbrigg of Norfolk. It was thought that actually initially Anthony survived the damage to his jaw and a punctured lung. However, the punctured lung, because it built up with blood, basically he drowned in his own blood after a couple of days probably. Now the next bit of the story is it would be expected that foreign knights who died in Prussia would be buried in Königsberg. However, we know that Roger Felbrigg was buried at Königsberg because there's a plaque at a church in Norfolk where he came from. It said he died in Prussia and there his corpse is buried. John de Moulton is also buried at Königsberg as well. But what happened to Anthony? Well, for whatever reason, Anthony was treated in this amazing way. He was treated in such a way that he was treated far better than any kings that I can think of from that period. He wasn't mummified either. Mummification is when you take out organs and you treat the body and you fill it with things to make it look and whatever. That's a process of mummification. This body wasn't mummified. It wasn't really treated either. Secondly, and perhaps even more strangely, the decomposition of the body seems to have stopped after a short time. In other words, within hours of the person dying, they're treating the body. Basically, it's describing here that there's a certain fat that acts to protect the skin for a short period of time. It looks that this rapidly formed around the body and was able to preserve his liver, his kidneys, his heart. And actually, as they cut open his body, and they actually removed the ribs and actually got into his lungs, they punctured his lungs, and blood squirted out. So they managed to suck some of this liquid blood out of the lungs. And as you can see from the images, there was a lot of blood there when they opened the body. It was even possible to guess the last breakfast of porridge and grapes. We now know it is the body of Anthony de Lacy. There was one strange thing about the body, other than everything that we said. Big chunks of his brain were missing. Now, how is it all his body was so perfectly preserved, even his tongue, but, most of his brain was missing? Was it in fact removed? We don't know. So what we're going to do, there's Kunas Castle, which was leveled completely by the knights in 1368. And there is Marienburg Castle, where they first got to before they went to Königsberg and died in that fateful siege. And to finally show you This would have been the extended territory of the Poles and the Lithuanians, whatever we're talking about. And again, showing you what was happening. Now, when you read this stuff online and you use this for teaching, it's always wise to read through stuff, including the following. Note the problem with this unanswered question. Antony's return journey was probably by boat to an East English port, but that is guesswork. What is wrong with that statement? Anyone?
Well, he was buried in, I don't know, where did he say he was
No,
buried?
Anne, how else is he going to get to England other than by boat?
Yeah.
Basically,
I thought we were talking about Lithuania.
No. So anyway, forget about the middle sentence there. Don't make sense either. The hair held round Antony's neck is a mystery. An expert from Lancaster University suggests it is most likely his wife's, as he died in what was a war zone. So the hair might possibly have been taken with him as a love token, or was the hair of a lover. On that note, can we have some questions? Oh God, that looks frightening.
I'm gonna wait till I read the notes.
Just one question on the lead analysis of Maud's body. Would the lead casket that she was buried beside have actually caused any fluctuation in her lead content?
Oh fuck yeah! Sorry, I apologize. Yes, you are right. There'd be a fluctuation in the lead signature on the body.
So
Anthony did come back to Britain then.
Of course he did. That's why he was buried there, you knob. Right.
Yeah. But he did go to Lithuania and then came back.
Yes.
Oh,
that's what I've just been given a lecture about, you silly woman. Godfrey, next, go on.
Yeah, you know these archaeologists back in the 80s had cocked up the excavation. Were they censured at all? Or was that sort of thing typical of that time?
Look,
it's only you and me are connected.
Hang on, shut up, you. Right, Godfrey, Goff. I wish you would change your title on you to Goff. I keep calling you that name. But anyway, the problem is archaeology is still a boys' school, okay? As I found out 2 years ago with the archaeological discoveries at the 5 Mile Lane, most of the establishment pulled ranks against me because I had reported it. Some were on my side, but the fact of the matter is, so that's what it's like today. If anyone makes any mistakes in archaeology, they cover it up. But unfortunately, somebody actually filmed this, and you have that archaeologist talking, and it's almost as if they did nothing wrong, even though in the audience you've got people going, "Oh my God, look at the mess up that they've done." There was no censorship. If I did this to a body today, right, it's likely that the Ministry of Justice would come down on me. Would really come down on me, and it's just I don't know why this happened back then. So there was no censorship back then, and there still isn't really. Any other questions?
No, but it was fascinating.
Oh, Del, you know, it's so good to have you along, Del.
I think there's a number of unanswered questions.
Unfortunately, we can't go back and answer the questions because they reburied the body. Now, did they do that with Otzi the Iceman? No. And it makes you wonder. I always say that lots of archaeology in Britain is really badly done. And this is a good demonstration of that.
Did they analyse where the lead coffin was actually made?
No, but this is the problem. No. Yeah, that is an awful, and they reburied the lead coffin as well, so we're not going to know either. No, I can't put this into words. When I did this on Tuesday, at the end, everyone was like, "We're gobsmacked."
Yeah.
Right. Anyone else? Just one more question from somebody. All right. Well, I'm going to say a few things. You will. What technically should be happening is that all of you guys don't need the notes, but I'll be sending you all the notes anyway via email.
Oh, that's good.
So you'll be getting
That's
them
great.
anyway. Next week we'll be doing the same thing. That I believe that worked far better than Skype. That worked all the way through on Skype. It's constantly being interrupted and stuff. And as technology, and actually, this has cost, to have this technology for a year, it's cost Archaeology Cymru 150 quid. So you are paying your bottom dollar for something of quality, and you're getting me as well.
An actual.
I want my money back.
Yeah, good.
I've just got to go and open a bottle of wine now.
Yeah, I think I need something as well. I need something.
Hey, okay,
Right.
Bridget, class, I'm going now. Bye bye.
Right, Godfrey. Godfrey,
Bye-bye,
I'll see you
Godfrey.
I'll see you next week.
Okay.
Night, Godfrey.
Bye bye.
Bye bye, darling.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. They're very strange in Lantwick Major. Anyway, so Anne's gone.
Yeah.
Anne's gone.
I've got to go now as well.
Right, okay then. Have you all
Bye,
enjoyed?
Luke.
Have you all enjoyed today? You have. Thank you very much
Yes.
for joining us.
Been very good. Very good.
I'm glad you've enjoyed it. And are you
Yeah.
all joining us next Thursday?
Yes,
Yes,
I'll be there.
I can't go anywhere.
Oh yeah. That's a really good point, isn't it? You can't go anywhere.
We'll be here. I'll be here.
Okay
Richard
then.
will be here.
Thank you. Yeah, Rich will
Bye
be here.
bye.
Many. See you, Pat. I'll see you next week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. And Henri, you're the last one. I gotta be honest with you, right? I had no idea when we spoke on Monday, because we'd just paid for this, right, that this would work so well. As technology goes, we've used YouTube, we've used Skype, we've used MSN, we've used what else have we used? There's another one that we've used online. In other words, they do it so shit on these other platforms, and they keep saying, if you pay, right, it'll work perfectly. So if I'd have paid for Skype in the first place, right, which I never have, right, I wouldn't have had any problems.
No, this has worked really well. I mean, we've all just got to get used to it. That's all.
Yeah, we got to get used to it. And I tell you what, right, I am absolutely knackered. I've done 2 of these today.
Right, you better go and lie down. I can tell it's exhausting.
I've done the equivalent of 5 hours of this today, right? And I am going to lie down. Do you know what one university lecturer said to me once? He said to me, "How many classes do you lecture a week?" And at that time, I said, "I do 8." And he looked at me and said, "When I was a university professor, right?"
You probably did 2.5 hours a week.
Hang on, yeah. He said I did 8 hours and about 2 hours of teaching.
Well, yeah, because our lecturers used to do only 5 hours a week in a college.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it?
Yeah, just slightly. Anyway, thank you very much. That was very good.
It was.
And even with Anne keeping up.
I don't think she was fully on form today, but I think Goff was put right off.
Anyway, I look forward to the notes, and the YouTube video was good as well. I enjoyed that. Looked at that the other night and read the notes
Do you know,
on Julius Caesar.
yeah, it was good. And you know the way I did? I explain how I did that. I did because I must have done that on Tuesday. I looked at the images. I spoke against the images, I think, and all that. Then my computer wrote that in because I had that package ages ago, and then And then what I had to do was edit it, but it turned out quite well. I thought, yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, no, that I was very impressed with that. So thank you very much. Thank you for the effort.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. If I can survive this, if I can survive this, I will.
Right, look after yourself.
Look after yourself. I'll see you Thursday. Keep well.
Okay, will do.
Take care, Henri. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Yeah, it's all right. Groupon was getting in the way of the leaving button. Right.
All right. See you, Groupon.
Bye.
Thank you for that, Henri. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Hi, Carl.
Bye-bye,
Thank you.
Pat. Do you know where the button is to press?
Yes. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.